And it's almost tempting, isn't it? Despite the backdrop of tragedy and carnage, it's almost tempting to reflect for a moment longer on that curious sort of sense of unity that hung over the country after Vladimir Putin mounted his illegal invasion of Ukraine. I can't remember something, except possibly the football. No, the football doesn't work, does it? Because there's no UK or Great Britain team. I can't remember the last time. Maybe the Olympics in 2012. A couple of weird Tories were complaining about there being too many. I forget which minority they were cross about in the opening ceremony. But generally speaking, when was the last time you felt that the country was speaking almost as one on a given subject? It's a really good question, that, actually. Why don't you try and answer it on the texts and the WhatsApps? 03456060973 for the WhatsApp, 84850 for the text. At times the country in your lifetime has been pretty much united, speaking almost as one. There were exceptions, of course there were. But even the president of the UK branch of the Vladimir Putin fan club, Nigel Farage, I think, was wise enough to keep his gob shut, rather than speaking out in support of Putin after the invasion in 2022. I think he tried to blame the invasion of Crimea in 2014 on Ukrainians, or possibly on the EU, actually, given that it was pre-Brexit. I put a few quid on that, even though I'm not certain that I'm right. And then the terminally online, like the woman I bumped into infamously when I was doing jury service, who truly believed that all of the aid being sent to Ukraine was being spent on luxury yachts by Volodymyr Zelenskyy, or that she also believed, of course, that Michelle Obama is actually in reality a man, but that is a consequence of what we were talking to Elliot Higgins about yesterday. I don't know that the Queen's death fits into that category, because a lot of Republicans took the opportunity to air their grievances about the existence of the monarchy in the general. Hating Liz Truss, Fabio suggests. That's pretty good. Adolescence, the TV show, that felt like the country was speaking as one. Everyone apart from Kemi Badenoch, Joe says, was in agreement about that. But I think Chris is currently winning. He points out the last time the country truly spoke as one was when Deirdre Barlow was unfairly imprisoned, was wrongfully imprisoned. 6 minutes after 10 is the time. So I mentioned that, and I'll quote one UK political figure. Who do you think this was? Who do you think said this not long ago? I simply cannot believe that Trump will ditch the Ukrainians. On the contrary, having worked out, as he surely has, that there is no deal to be done with Putin, I reckon there is a good chance that he will double down and finish what he started by giving them what they need to win. Which international statesperson of extraordinary sagaciousness and insight. Is it sagaciousness or sagacity, Keith? I always forget. Yes, is his answer. It is definitely sagaciousness or sagacity. Which international statesman do you think came up with that comment just a few short months ago? I simply cannot believe that Trump will ditch the Ukraine. Do you want a clue? Do you want a clue? Somebody who is paid about £500,000 a year for their insights into international politics. I simply cannot believe that Trump will ditch the Ukrainians. On the contrary, having worked out, as he surely has, that there is no deal to be done with Putin, I reckon there is a good chance that he will double down and finish what he started. These are, and it is not Daniel Hannan, these are Daniel Hannan levels of wrongness. Daniel Hannan's crown as the wrongest man in the world, under threat now from the man who put him in the House of Lords, because it was, perhaps inevitably, Boris Johnson who spoke those words. Boris Johnson, who's sycophantic. I mean, and he's done a U-turn on Trump, remember? He used to make jokes about how unpleasant it would be to bump into him. He attacked him, his intellect and his integrity, when he was telling lies about no-go zones in London. But, there he is. Earlier this year or late last year, opining that Trump would never ditch the Ukrainians. In fact, he would end up arming them to such a degree that they would be able to defeat Russia. 8 minutes after 10 is the time. And now it appears to be over. As we touched upon yesterday, the inability of good journalists, good analysts, good commentators to recognise the sheer reversal of the natural order, the utter abandonment of everything that we've known in the post-war period, continues to infect a lot of the coverage. There's still a sort of will he, won't he. There's still a sort of, maybe there's a secret master plan. Maybe he's playing 4D chess. Maybe he knows what he's doing. And of course, what we have established together, and I still fall down the trap. I need you to pull me out of it most mornings when we discuss matters Ukrainian. You pull me out of the hole because I start wondering whether there is actually something else going on other than the insatiable narcissistic ego of Donald Trump riding roughshod over everything that we in the West have held dear now for generations. Yesterday, he attacked Zelenskyy again. He did a thing that I think we have said he would do, inevitably, which is when he failed to deliver the deal that he promised, he would blame it on Ukraine. And of course, if Ukraine had agreed to a deal that was effectively demanding that they hand over everything to Vladimir Putin that Vladimir Putin wants, had he actually successfully extorted and bullied Ukraine into accepting that settlement, two things could be said with certainty. Vladimir Putin would ignore it at some not too distant point in the future and send troops back into Ukraine, and Donald Trump would claim to some fanfare among his supporters that he'd pulled off some sort of diplomatic coup. So if someone stole your house, let's just say someone moved into your upstairs, the upstairs in your home. I fully appreciate some people don't have an upstairs, but stop splitting hairs. Someone just moved in. You came home one day from work and you opened your front door and you sat down in the kitchen, you put the kettle on, you made yourself a cup of tea, and you thought, hang on a minute, that's a bit strange. There's someone upstairs. So you go to the bottom of the stairs, you go, hello? Hello? Is there anybody up there? And someone shouts down the stairs. I think it would be inappropriate of me to do a Russian accent at this point, but somebody shouts down the stairs, this is my home now, leave me alone. So what do? You phone the police, you go to the authorities, you appeal to the law. And imagine they turned around and said, it's absolutely fine, we've settled this problem, the people upstairs are going to stay there, and you're going to live downstairs now. Actually, let's say that you phoned Donald Trump. Donald Trump appointed himself a deliverer of a peace deal in your home. I will, on the first day of my presidency, sort out the argument about the people living upstairs in the house that you own. And then nearly 4 months later, he announces he's come to a brilliant deal and they're going to stay upstairs and you are going to suck it up. And when you say, no, I'm not, he says, I can't believe these ungrateful plebs in the downstairs are dismissing and refusing to sign up to my beautiful, beautiful peace deal. In fact, they are harming the negotiations and making inflammatory comments about my wonderful, wonderful peace deal. This after Kyiv said it would not accept Russian sovereignty over Crimea. Trump said that you, downstairs, had no cards to play after he abruptly withdrew his negotiators from talks in your house about whether or not these thieving, genocidal interlopers upstairs, I should probably have added that they've started killing people in your spare bedroom, but they're going to stay there, and that's the peace deal that Donald Trump has put together. What happens next is a question that I'm tempted to ask you almost every day. And listen, I talk about Israel and Gaza a lot, so spare me the text saying, okay, now do Israel and Gaza. When I'm talking about Israel and Gaza, we don't talk about Ukraine and Russia. And when we talk about Ukraine and Russia, we don't talk about Israel and Gaza, except to acknowledge many similarities in the treatment of the Palestinian people and the Ukrainian people, up to and including alleged war crimes. But please, don't be an idiot and think that you have to talk about something else every single time you talk about something else. Because today it would be an enormous insult to the Ukrainian people not to talk exclusively about the Ukrainian issue. An enormous insult. Just as it would be an insult to the Palestinian people if you were telling me to start talking about the Ukrainians whenever we were addressing the plight of Palestinian people. It's not often I allow my irritation at the kind of undergraduate, two-dimensional, self-appointed geniuses to bubble to the surface, but today I'm prepared to make an exception. Sit down and be quiet. The question today is about American abandonment of Ukraine. The question today is about what happens, what the rest of the world should do, and what the rest of the world can do. And I don't know the answers to those questions, and I'm not sure that Keir Starmer does. He's been boxed into a very uncomfortable situation. I think someone's just rung in and said, what about the Falklands? There's a level of whataboutery that makes my ears want to shrivel up and drop off. Honestly, I don't know what's happened in the last few months, but the first 10 minutes, my inbox is full of the stupidest people imaginable. It's only when I get to about the 10:15 junction. It's as if my audience only arrives at 10 o'clock. And I'm left with this weird hangover of absolute bone-crunching idiocy that I have to wade through for the first 12 minutes of the programme. I'm sure I'm imagining things. I don't know what Keir Starmer is going to do after he has pointed out that any peace in Ukraine is going to be contingent upon a US security backstop. In the absence of a US security backstop, what is left? In the absence of US support for Ukraine, do we even know what is left? 0345 6060 973. What will the West do? I wonder how naive it sounds to you when I say there is no earthly way Zelenskyy can ever stop fighting. There is no earthly way Zelenskyy can ever accept a peace deal that doesn't at least recognize the historical or the most recent historical Ukrainian borders. If Zelenskyy rolls over, if he is compelled to roll over by an absence of international support, the message sent to the Ukraine, the message sent to the Kremlin, is that you can do whatever you want. The failure to understand this seems to me to be either willful or spectacular or both. You tell Vladimir Putin that his tactics have worked. You send a message to the Kremlin that says, you keep Ukraine, you carry on. Ukraine will suck it up. Ukraine's refusal to accept your theft of their land is a Ukraine problem, not a Kremlin problem. The ignorance of the last 100 years of history that you need to think for a nanosecond that this is about anything other than Trump respecting a fellow despot as opposed to having any interest at all in the welfare of Ukrainian people. Absolutely extraordinary, because it ignores the existence of Lithuania, it ignores the existence of Estonia, it ignores the existence of all the former Soviet states upon which Vladimir Putin still has designs. It ignores the genocidal imperial ambition of a psychopath in the Kremlin. And I don't know whether Western leaders have got the wherewithal to stand up to it. I don't know whether they've got the support to stand up to it. I don't know whether there is a will, an appetite to properly support Ukraine. And crucially, I don't know what it looks like in the absence of United States support. So I'm going to ask you, what does it mean? What does Donald Trump's withdrawal complete about? I'm going to go further. The United States of America is now an ally of Vladimir Putin's Russia. They've dangled little carrots in front of him so successfully that he's now got designs upon rare earth materials in parts of the former Soviet Union. He wants what they call in America aluminum, and Vladimir Putin has promised to give it to him. I can envision in the not too distant future an abandoned Ukraine relying almost exclusively upon European support and its own stout lion hearts, while Russia signs deals with Donald Trump's United States of America designed to enrich both of them. The days of sanctions bringing oligarchs to their knees, the hopes of Putin being toppled by internal pressure brought about by financial penalties being inflicted upon his cronies who have robbed their own country blind are completely over. I haven't spoken to my friend Bill Browder about this yet, but those rapidly growing hopes that sanctions upon oligarchs were going to achieve the unthinkable and actually get the monstrous man out of the Kremlin, those are now disappearing over the horizon with every utterance from the Oval Office. The United States of America is an ally of Russia. What does that mean? Most obviously for Ukraine in the short term, but in the long term, perhaps for the whole world. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. There is no more important story in the world today. There is no more important issue than the idea of a Western alliance. A Western alliance standing up to Russian imperial ambition. There never has been, not since the end of the Second World War, or at least not since the fall of the Berlin Wall. And yet, in the absence of the United States of America, everything that we thought we knew no longer applies. What does this mean? What does an alliance between Putin and Trump mean for Ukraine, for the world, and for, Keir Starmer, or, if you prefer, sort of Western political leaders? Is it there, do you think? Remember that 1939 is not that long ago. The idea of European allies joining forces to repel a European enemy without any American involvement at all until Pearl Harbor. It shouldn't feel unthinkable, should it? This is one of the silver linings to what's happened, is that the necessity of Europe cutting itself off from the umbilical of US aid is now real and present. But how mad would it be to suggest that Europe and Ukraine could go it alone?